UFC's first foray to South Carolina took a late hit on Friday when the bantamweight scrap between John Lineker and Rob Font was scratched after the Brazilian suffered a cut while training late Thursday evening. But by the time the action hit the Octagon on Saturday night, the capacity crowd at Bon Secours Wellness Arena in Greenville wasn't thinking about the fight that fell off the card. Instead, the fans were focused on cheering on the action inside the cage, as 11 pairs of athletes made the walk across the threshold and put it all on the line. While there were a number of decisions throughout the evening, every fight was entertaining and the night ended in spectacular fashion thanks to veteran featherweight Chan Sung Jung. Here's a look back at what transpired on the main card and the impact the results will have going forward. Chan Sung Jung blasts Renato Moicano in main event. The Korean zombie made quick work of Renato Moicano on Saturday, closing out the UFC's first trip to Greenville, South Carolina emphatically. As the two sized each other up in the center of the cage, Moicano fired off a jab, which Jung slipped easily, countering with a right hand that spun the Brazilian around in place. The South Korean standout chased him to the floor, initially hunting for a submission before switching to strikes from back mount that forced referee Blake Grice to step in and wave things off. What it means: this was an amazing rebound effort for Jung, who got stopped at the very last second in a firefight with Yair Rodriguez last time out. After being on the receiving end of a crazy finish in that one, the veteran featherweight showed he's still a contender by cracking Moicano with a clean right hand right out of the chute and quickly working to secure the finish. Injuries have limited Jung to just 2 prior appearances since returning from his mandatory military service, but they've been wildly entertaining, and after looking like perhaps he was slipping down the divisional hierarchy with his loss in November, the 32-year-old showed he still deserves to be in the thick of the chase in the 145-pound ranks. On the other side of things, this is a tough loss for Moicano, who has now been finished in back-to-back outings this year. The 30-year-old Brazilian had only lost to Brian Ortega before 2019, and losing to Jung and Jose Aldo isn't the end of the world, but you never want to be at risk of losing 3 in a row, and in a division as deep and competitive as featherweight, Moicano is now in a tough spot. Randy Brown garners biggest win of his career, stops Bryan Barberena, one of the early finds from the Dana White's Looking for a Fight series. Randy Brown has been inconsistent since entering the Octagon, posting a 4-3 record. But on Saturday night, Rude Boy delivered the best performance of his career, keeping on Bryan Barberena from start to finish before putting away Bam Bam midway through the final round. Brown did an excellent job of managing distance, using his length to keep Barberena outside, working long jabs and a variety of kicks that seemed to frustrate the North Carolina native. When they did clinch up, the Jamaican-born welterweight from Queens worked short knees and showed improved strength, controlling things along the fence. In the third, Brown hurt Barberena with a front kick to the midsection and patiently put him away, taking his time to find the right shots and fell the fan favorite rather than rushing in and squandering the opportunity. What it means: this is a step in the right direction for Brown, who has always shown promise, but needed to gain more experience, as the 28-year-old made a quick rise from the regional circuit and has been learning on the fly inside the Octagon. His size is always going to be a major asset in the welterweight division, and he does a good job of utilizing his reach and long legs to his advantage. Brown showed greater awareness on Saturday as well, avoiding prolonged exchanges with the grimy Barberena, who drew Vicente Luque into a brawl last time out and nearly bested the surging welterweight. If he continues making strides, Brown could become someone to keep an eye on in the 170-pound ranks. This is a tough loss for Barberena, who is now 2-4 over his last 6 fights. While 3 of those losses have come against contenders, this setback drops him to 5-5 in the UFC, and he's now 3 years removed from his best victory, an upset win over Warlley Alves at UFC 198. I don't think he's in danger of getting let go because his fight with Lineker was one of the best of the year, but Barberena's back is against the wall now and his next outing will be a must-win affair, regardless of whom it's against. Andre Ewell gets back in the win column, outstriking Anderson dos Santos after having his 5-fight winning streak snapped by rising star Nathaniel Wood last time out. Andre Ewell got back into the win column with an impressive striking effort against durable Brazilian Anderson dos Santos in the swing bout of Saturday's 5-fight main card. Ewell, who debuted with a win over former champ Renan Barão, busted up Barrinja on the feet, showcasing his slick boxing and hand speed, sniping singles and stinging with combinations. While dos Santos showed great resilience and tenacity, continuing to press forward and control the action whenever he was able to get it to the ground, Ewell's ability to pile up the points on the feet, collect the unanimous decision win. What it means, this one has to reset opinions about Ewell and his place in the division, as he's now gone 10-2 over his last dozen, with his losses coming to Wood and Bellator newcomer Patrick "Patchy" Mix, who subbed out Ricky Bandejas in about a minute last weekend. When he can keep his opponents at range, Ewell is tough to contend with because his hands are so sharp. However, there are moments where he gets too loose and too aggressive, which can get him in trouble. He needs to continue working on his defensive wrestling, but a lot of that is footwork and IQ, as he can get out of place and off balance at times. As for dos Santos, he's now 0-2 in the UFC, but both fights have been thoroughly entertaining. He should get one more shot, and if he can build on the positives he showed here, the 28-fight veteran should put himself in a position to secure his first victory inside the Octagon. Andrea Lee dominates Montana De La Rosa in Battle of Emerging Flyweights. Andrea Lee earned her 3rd straight UFC win and 7th consecutive victory overall on Saturday, fully establishing herself as a future contender in the strawweight division. Lee busted up De La Rosa's nose early in the fight, pumping a clean jab down the middle that backed her up and caused the blood to start flowing. While the former, The Ultimate Fighter, contestant hung tough throughout and was hunting for submissions right to the end, there was a clear skill difference between these former training partners, and Lee exploited it to her advantage. What it means, entering the night ranked number 10 and no. 11 respectively in the flyweight division, Lee should climb a little higher once the rankings are updated and puts herself in position to face a top 10 opponent next time out. She's been heralded as a potential contender since her days on the regional circuit and is now finally starting to put it all together and climb the ladder. When she stays within herself and doesn't rush, Lee's striking is very good, clean, crisp, precise and with a healthy dose of power, and should make her competitive against the majority of the competitors ahead of her in the division. What's going to be interesting to see is how she does against a more polished, more experienced fighter, as thus far, veterans have been her kryptonite. De La Rosa is still young and this should end up being a learning experience for her. Her grappling is solid and there is no denying her toughness and heart, all of which will aid her in the future, but she needs to get stronger and improve both her striking and ability to blend her techniques together. After earning 3 straight wins to start her UFC tenure, this loss won't set her back too far and should eventually serve as a development marker in her career. Kevin Holland scores suspect decision win over Alessio Di Chirico. Despite fighting with an injured right shoulder for the final 5 minutes, Kevin Holland left Greenville with a 2nd straight victory after edging out Italian Alessio Di Chirico on the scorecards in what felt like a bad decision. Over the opening 2 rounds, Di Chirico landed the heavier shots, hurting Holland with an elbow late in the first before getting the better of things in the second, where the Texas native seemed to pop his shoulder out during a scramble. Rather than bowing out, Holland came out of the third and outlanded Di Chirico in the third and scored a clean sweep of the scorecards. What it means, watching it live, this felt like a very bad decision, given that you could make a case for scoring the fight 30-27 for Di Chirico. Even if you give Holland the third on volume, I'm not sure what other round he won. Holland is a guy the UFC seems to have a little interest in promoting, and he talks a huge game, so he's likely to get a little step up in competition and continued push going forward, but this is now consecutive outings where he's largely failed to impress. The raw materials are there and he showed some promise in his debut against Thiago Santos, but Holland seems too content to coast and chirp, which is always going to limit how far he will progress. If he were to switch camps and get with a coach and some training partners who get on him, he could be a top 15 fighter, but until that happens, expect to see more maddening performances like this. On the flip side, you have to feel for Di Chirico, at least a little, because he looked to have done enough to garner a victory. That said, he had an injured opponent standing in front of him in the third round and let off the gas, creating the opening Holland needed to steal this win on the cards. What's interesting is that middleweight is fairly fluid at the moment, and a strong showing for either guy would have elevated them to the next tier in the division. Instead, Holland sneaks out a suspect decision and Di Chirico lets one get away. UFC Greenville official results: Shin Sung-Yum def. Renato Moicano by first round TKO, strikes, featherweights Randy Brown def. Brian Barberena by third round TKO, strikes, welterweights Andrew Ewell def. Enson dos Santos by unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28, bantamweights Andrea Lee def. Montana De La Rosa by unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28, flyweights Kevin Holland def. Alessio Di Chirico by unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28, middleweights Dan Ige def. Kevin Aguilar by unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 30-27, featherweights Ashley Yoder def. Sayuri Kondo by unanimous decision, 30-26, 30-25, 30-24, strawweights Laos Peña def. Matt Wyman by third round TKO, punches, lightweights Jairzinho Rosenstruik def. Alan Crowder by first round knockout punches, heavyweights Molly McCann def. Ariane Lipski by unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 30-27, flyweight Byron Wynn def. Eric Spicely by unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28, middleweights Let's Block Ads. Why?